Welcome to ASMR Chess, where we relax while we learn about the best game in the world. We are currently looking here at my score from the last couple of days playing Blitz on chess.com. And as you can see, wins. So I have just been absolutely crushing. Even beat a titled player here, a candidate master. And I experienced this. It just clicks and I play very well. And other times I play very poorly.
Failure is your destiny. You are made of stupid.
The video today is about exploring what is going on when it clicks. When do we get into the flow state? How can we help ourselves get there more often? So here we are with one of the games that started the win streak, where also during the game I felt that I was not missing stuff. I was playing actively and I was not making a lot of mistakes. What I have done here is that I have started out by doing a game review, which is a function of chess.com. Chess.com is the platform that this particular game was played on. And you can see I was playing black in this game. I was playing against a German guy called Werner, who had a rating of 1566, so I should be a favorite, even with my rating all the way down to 1650. Which is actually about 350 points lower than my best rating. So let's first check this graph over here and to see what that indicates. So the white side is how white's advantage is, black side is how black's advantage is. So you can see it's a level game. It's a level game all the way. There's just very small swings, and then my opponent makes some mistake. I capitalize on the mistake, and I don't let go. I don't make any mistakes. From there I keep the advantage and I win the game. So let's take a look at the actual moves of this, so we can understand and you can understand how to improve and get into the flow state where you access the peak of your chess understanding, the peak of your own ability. So my opponent is playing pawn to d4. I have some systems against this. I always start with knight f6. This is also the most popular move, and when they play c4, as we see here, I play the Budapest defense. This is a gambit. If you are a regular on the channel, you know that I like to play this. It's a wild tactical opening that can give a lot of fun games. More importantly, I feel quite comfortable here. I know a bit of the theory. I've made several videos on the opening as well. The correct move is to capture. My opponent does capture. I then move the knight here. I am just playing from memory at this point. This is all theory that I have studied. The knight is attacking the pawn. The pawn is defended by this knight, as you can see. I attack it again in a little while, but first I develop the bishop in order to force pawn to e3, blocking in this bishop that can no longer come and help defend this pawn. This is known as the Adler variation, and I'll go pretty quickly over it because I've studied this many times on the channel. So if you're a regular here, you may not want to learn about this for the millionth time. And so knight c6 attacks the pawn again, and the book move bishop to e2, capture the pawn, and castles. So here I capture the knight. This is actually a book move, but it's not shown as such, even though I think it should. Bishop takes, and we attack the bishop again with the knight. So the bishop drops back. This is a completely normal development of this opening. I castle, and you can see now it's back to book again. These little icons here shows that this is a book move. This means that this has been studied for a long time by grandmasters. My opponent plays e4. It's given a question mark. It's not a book move, it's not a theoretical move, certainly it's not a particular bad move as well. I defend the knight here, and this is just a waiting move. And I'm waiting for something special. So my opponent develops the knight. This is all very, very standard, taking control of the center, and nothing much is happening here. But you can see that I am quite cautious. And I notice one thing here. When I am in the flow state, that I want you to also notice in your own games, which is, what are you looking at? I notice when I am in the flow state, I am not looking at my own pieces, I am looking at my opponent's pieces. When I am not in the flow state, I am looking at my own pieces. I am thinking about how can I develop them, are they positioned well to attack? When I am in the flow state, I am only looking at my opponent's pieces. And somehow my brain is, how should we say, has an intuitive understanding of where my own pieces are, in maybe the same way that your brain right now has an intuitive sense of where your legs are in relation to your arms, in relation to your body. It just, you don't have to consciously think about that, you just know it, and you know that if you want to reach out to grab a mug of coffee, for instance, you can just look at the cup, and your intuition and your brain will automatically generate the correct order of moves and motions that is needed to grab the mug. In this example, my opponent's pieces is the mug. I am looking at my opponent's pieces, and I have an intuitive understanding from where my own pieces are. Now I play this a5 move, and I had hoped that my opponent would have earlier played pawn to a3, which is one of the main theoretical moves. The idea is to support b4, attack this bishop, and then fianchetto with the dark squared bishop for white. And of course a5 combats this, but there is this secret trick that you probably know if you know this opening, you can do this unorthodox rook lift and get a rook over to h6 or g6, where it will be attacking the king. Of course, we're not going to h6 at this very moment because this bishop is defending it, but if the bishop had gone to b2, it would not be defending this. So this is one of the main ideas in the opening. And I had hoped to play this as a response to pawn to a3. That's why I was playing these waiting moves. But my opponent played a different strategy, particularly aiming for pawn to e4. So now with pawn to e4, this move, and that's the whole difference, that's what makes this game unique, is that this bishop is developed in a different way from how it is usually developed. And with this developing moves, I notice thing number two that is different from when I am in flow state and when I am not in flow state. So I am now able to adapt to this unique situation. When I am not in the flow state, I will be very much a creature of habit, and I would say, okay, I have been playing this position, it looks very similar to all the other Budapest gambits or Budapest defenses I have played, so I'll just play it in the same way. What could the difference be? This bishop is here instead of here, it's almost the same. But in flow state, there is a difference. In the flow state, I adapt my play. I think, okay, this is actually a big difference, and I am not going to ignore that. I'm going to go for the ideas that I know, but I will be cautious, and I will consider the small nuances, and somehow there is enough hard disk space in my brain. Something about being in the flow state makes it possible to not be a creature of habit, but notice the small details. So let's, while we analyze this game, see if we can figure out what kind of small differences it really is that allows us to be in this flow state. And of course we are describing what the flow state feels like, but we are also trying to figure out how to get there. So I play this idea. This is what I was thinking about earlier, but and this is, could you say, this standard idea that is not particularly original and not catering to the exact needs of this position. Maybe it is, however, a completely fine move, and how will I use this move? That's the question. So my opponent jumps in with this knight here. So makes a lot of sense. Of course, we have then the knight protected here. It's a great outpost post square. If this knight moves, the knight will work in concert on c7. This all makes a lot of sense. I'm thinking, okay, this is not possible right now. Usually it would be. I would go for the queen here, trying to checkmate on h7. They would probably play pawn to h3, defending. I would play pawn to d6, opening up the bishop for a sacrifice on h3. Takes with the queen, and a devastating attack against the king. That's how the opening usually goes. But it's not possible right now. Of course, this square is protected by the bishop, and I have some specific needs in the position. So I play rook to e6 instead. A little waiting move. I'm still considering getting the rook to one of these squares to look at the king. But I would like to play a move like d6 first. I would like to get rid of this bishop first. I have some new tasks. This position is demanding something special of me that I'm not used to, and I'm saying, okay, if I put the rook here first, I can start solving the problems that my opponent is posing me. I can play pawn to d6, taking care of this knight forever. I can play pawn to c6, kicking out this pesky knight, which is very aggressive and helping my opponent's attack quite a bit. How do we make it actionable? We want to help ourselves get into the flow state as often as possible. One question is, what can we do in this situation? We sit down to play a game. How can we get ourselves in the flow state in the exact moment we are sitting down to play? The other question is, what can we do in our general? What can we do in general for our chess and for our habits, for our thinking in general, to get us in a position to prime us to be able to get in the flow state? And one thing that I notice is that when I am in the flow state, I have more readily available my knowledge. I access my passive knowledge, my understanding, in this case my chess understanding. I access it much more easily. This is only possible, of course, if I have a chess understanding. So one thing that we can do to help us get in the flow state is to prime ourselves to learn the theory, to learn the principles, and not get too frustrated when we don't see an immediate payoff, but know that we are getting all this into our passive knowledge, so that when we access the flow state, we will have all the tools available, and all of a sudden we can go to the tool shed, no problem, just pick out the tools we need because something has clicked in our brain that is allowing us to do that. Opponent drops back with the bishop. My opponent, we see here, and I had this sense in the game also, that I am not, my attack is not flowing, it's not, this position does not play itself, but also my opponent's position does not play itself. My opponent doesn't have a ready-made plan because they are not following the general established theory of how to play the Adler variation of the Budapest defense. In that variation, this bishop would be over here somewhere on b2 and would be looking at the potential attacks against the king, and there would be this slight difference. Now my opponent is wobbling a little bit, trying to establish a way to get me out of the center. I am currently blocking the center. This knight makes this knight with the attack on c7 ineffective. It would be so nice, of course, if they could play pawn to f4, but we see this bishop just making that impossible. So with seeing all of this, my thought during the game is, okay, they play this back here, and instead of being confused about it, the flow state somehow helps me being informed about the position, and I can sort of guess what they are thinking. And that's also a result of looking at their pieces, looking at the mug of coffee that I want to grab, instead of looking at myself and my own pieces so much. I'm thinking about their plans, and it makes intuitive sense, and I'm thinking they probably want to play f4. That's why they move the bishop back. They are probably going to want to play the king to h1, so it's not pinned by this bishop. So what do I do against that? So let's first allow these rooks to not take care of this pawn. Let's allow this knight to move here, for instance, or here, with an idea of coming here. Let's allow it to move. In order to allow it to move, we need to protect c7 so that we are not making these pieces strong. Just keeping the center clogged up for now. They improve their queen. It's a good move. You can see the evaluation is just 0.0. It's completely equal. Anyone can win this game. They're improving the queen. Makes a lot of sense. They're playing very sensible chess. The queen was the last piece that was not really developed. You could argue now this rook needs to come somewhere. This rook is already active as soon as they are able to play f4 after something like king h1. So now I can move the knight. And the knight is not doing that much here. But now the rooks are looking at this. This is why we played pawn to d6. Now we are attacking here. Cannot defend like this again because we have the strong bishop. So it's defended like this. I kick the knight. The knight moves back. I have improved my position somewhat. Now I go back with the knight. And this is maybe a little bit more philosophical, but I have noticed, and this is not just flow state in chess, but this is flow state in general in my life, basically. The better I perform, the more humble I get, and the more humble I get, the better I perform. So there's a synergy effect. Whereas if I do access a bit of flow state, if I do get that feeling it's all starting to click, instead of saying now I'm so great, I am playing so well, or I'm making all these very good decisions, I get more humble because I get more it's easier for me to notice when I'm wrong. Not just when my opponent is wrong, not just punishing my opponent's mistakes, or when seeing how other people are wrong, or have opinions that I think are wrong, or making logical flaws or whatever. No, that's not as interesting as noticing just how sometimes when pride can be an enemy. I think that pride is the enemy of wisdom. Pride is the enemy of insight, because pride will say that you are not allowed to admit when you are wrong. And here I'm just moving the knight back. I'm not trying to justify the knight being on g6 and saying this was a perfect move and I'll need to play like knight h4 to justify it. I'm just saying, well, I played the knight out. I got this knight to move back, so I did improve my position just a little bit. And actually, I want the knight here, because this bishop, if I could capture that, look at that. Also, we would have a check against the king and attack the queen at the same time. We would have to capture here. So this knight here is very good. Of course, if they do capture it with the bishop, we get rid of a very important defender. So no, let's go back with the knight. I am not too proud to play this move, even though it admits that one of my ideas maybe were not the best idea. Opponent moves back, so we don't want to allow me to capture here. That would be horrible. The bishop is no longer needed to defend here because the knight is blocking the attack from the rook, and also rook takes here is not going to be as effective because it's protected by the knight. I would be giving up in exchange, and the last sort of piece of the puzzle is that the knight here is attacking the c4 pawn. So by moving the bishop back, we defend, or my opponent defends that. Now I am starting to think about the specific needs of this position. I am playing the rook to g6. Normally, of course, h6 is where the rook would go in this opening. We would be attacking h2. But this bishop basically makes an attack against h2 impossible. So what can we do? How can we attack the king if we try to be less biased? We have less force of habit. The king moves out of the way. We have been allowing that. So now this bishop is not as strong anymore, you could say, because this attack here is now possible. And here I played a move. I remember being a little bit sort of impressed. It's weird to say that I'm impressed with myself, or like surprised. But I saw that I could play this move here, which looks like a huge mistake because of a sequence that my opponent is going to play that looks like it's just going to win the game for black. And you can say there is this question mark here because this is not a perfect move, and we can investigate the actual sequence that would give white a very slight advantage. That is, it's much harder to spot, particularly in a blitz game. You can see I have 35 seconds left at this point, so I'm not saying that I get in flow state and now I play perfect chess, but I did see the tactical sequence here that sort of allows all the pieces to do their job. So I get max value out of all of the pieces. And it's about this bishop, actually. It's about that this bishop supposed to not be as strong anymore because it's not pinning, because the king move, it's not pinning this pawn, but actually attacking this g1 square is actually extremely relevant. So my opponent thought they were winning. They fell for the trap. Queen takes queen, rook takes, and f4. So why is this not winning on the spot? Why is this fork of these two pieces not very, very good? Can you see? By playing this move here, bishop looking at g1. What's the weakness? Can you see? Interestingly, I just noticed this pattern. Normally in a non-flow state, I would have to calculate this. It would take a lot of time, and I would have to do it sort of manually, where in flow state, the brain can find somehow, like searching, like you search something on Google and the right things pop up. My brain is searching for what kind of patterns are relevant in this position, and instead of sort of calculating very manually, saying, okay, I go there, then they go there, but you have to consider all these possibilities. There are so many possibilities in chess. I mean, how many legal moves do I have in this position? This guy has 7, I have 6, and this guy has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29. It looks like I have about 31 legal moves here. And yet, in the flow state, instead of considering all the moves, saying, what if I go there? What happens? What if I go there? That's not possible. What if I go there? What happens? In the flow state, somehow our brains are able to access passive knowledge that we have, in this case an attacking pattern that I have apparently seen somewhere before. It can find it much more effectively, and it can guide my thinking and say, you don't have to calculate all of this, you just use this pattern because that is what is relevant. Like, if you have to reach out to get a mug, you are not going to consider, what if I go out on the street and go around the house 2 times and then go in? Does that help? No, intuitively you have a very clear strategy of getting the mug of coffee. And that's where we want to be with chess as well. We want to get it to be as intuitive and natural as possible. With all that said, have you found the tactic? I'll show you the tactic. We capture here. It actually gives us 2 exclamation marks. That's not bad. So why? The best move here, I think, is actually capturing the knight. And then I go here with the rook attacking here. I have a very, very good attack there. I'm -2 at this point, meaning I have a very significant advantage. But if you capture the rook, it's even worse. Now black is completely losing. Why? Excuse me, white is completely losing. Why is that? Why is that? Why? Like, I'm down material, I have sacrificed the exchange, this knight is under attack, where I'm going, like, if I play this backwards, it's going to be like a huge problem. But remember this guy. Now if you look at the king here, that's problematic. So we play rook e6. Again, 2 exclamation points. Not bad. And I think it's maybe not necessary to give this move 2 exclamation points, because the 2 exclamation points earlier of capturing here implies this move. This capturing here only works if you have seen rook to e6. If you have not playing rook to so those two question marks I think should also cover this one, but I'll take it. It's always nice to get those exclamation marks. So so if knight takes, rook h6 is checkmate, is the point. You can interpose the bishop for one move or capture the bishop, and then it's checkmate. And the only way out is to make space, and you have to move these two. And in order to move these two, you have to buy yourself a move. The only way to buy yourself a move is to sacrifice the bishop, so this is not check. Then you can defend like this. It shouldn't be too hard to figure out that you can just capture this, because you cannot recapture even this is pinned, and you are even also utilizing this bishop here. You could also have captured with the bishop, but the knight is now also threatening this check, which could be useful. And this is the only move that protects against rook takes bishop checkmate. We now capture the bishop. We are up material. This is check. There is only one move. You go here, and so this move, this little icon here, means that is forced. And with this move we have a check here, and king moves, and of course we can capture here, being up a bunch of material. And let's just finish the game in style. I only have 15 seconds, but it should be more than enough. So the king, as you can see, is cut off. It's also cut off from here, so my opponent is not seeing that I'm actually going for checkmate. I don't have to go for checkmate. I am up a lot of material, but this is actually checkmate. Thank you very much. And what did we learn from that? So I got some exclamation points rewarded. I played with an accuracy of 87. It says that I played off with a rating that looks like somebody playing at a 2000 ELO level. I'm not sure how accurate that system is, but we've got a bit of a feeling for at least what sort of things are in play. How does it feel when we have reached the flow state? And reaching the flow state is not magical. I think it's not something about that you just get completely new insight that you didn't have before, or your brain is working at a completely new level that it was not able to access before. I think the flow state is the brain working with what it has. You're not like gaining 50 IQ points by getting into the flow state. No, you are accessing the knowledge you already have. You are accessing the brain power, the calculation ability, the pattern recognition, and the focus that your brain is constantly capable of, but is almost all the time not able to access. So the next question becomes, what is different when we do access the flow state? So from this game, I think we learned that, for me at least, everybody's different. So maybe this has no relevance to you, but I think it very well could have. But for me at least, I am not becoming a different sort of person or accessing something that is mystical in any way when I get into the flow state where I perform a million times better than I would usually perform. No, something is just allowing me to access the knowledge, the understanding, the calculation ability, and the focus that I already have, and in principle or theoretically is always capable of. How can we maximize our chance of getting into the flow state? So that first game I showed you was from about the beginning of the flow state. Now we are at a different game. I'm playing against a Japanese guy, Yuya 64. Probably not because they were born in 64, but probably referring to the 64 squares on the chessboard. Did you know that Bobby Fischer, one of the best chess players of all time, although a controversial figure, was exactly 64 years old when he died in Iceland? Sort of a little bit poetic, a little bit. So these are the 64 squares of the chessboard. So we see pawn to e4. I play my pet system here with g6, and you know, opponent says, the computer says, oh, this is, you know, +1 to the opponent, but this makes no sense. This is theory. It's like you could see Magnus Carlsen play this opening with black that I'm playing. So it's only later when we go out of book that I'm making the actual inaccuracies. But I do have the actual inaccuracies. So we are playing this opening. They are taking control of the center because, of course, I am allowing them by playing on the side here with this fianchetto position and the sniper bishop. I'm allowing them to take control of the center. So, of course, they are doing that. And all of this is a theory. This is known as the Peart's defense. Many people call it the Perk defense because that's how it's spelled, but it's actually pronounced Peart's, or the modern defense, you could also say. And here, I believe a move like bishop c4 is more common, but it allows the center fork trick that I played against Istvan, and there's a whole bunch of theory there. Bishop to d3 is a perfectly fine move, although not that ambitious. I was not feeling in flow state here. Okay, so now we have established our theory about what the flow state is. We established that in the first game. Now let's see if we can figure out how to get there, because I was a little bit uneasy in this game at this point, and I was not feeling fully focused. I was not feeling concentrated. I was absolutely not feeling that I was in the flow state. So I just castled. We saw some normal developing moves. My opponent is not being very ambitious. This h3 move is very cautious. It's taking away this bishop. It's taking away this knight jump to g4. So normally I would be very happy if I was in flow state. I would be very happy with this. I would, you know, seize the opportunity. But not being in flow state, this was making me a bit uneasy because I had to create a plan. I could not just react and flow with the ebb and flow of the game, because my opponent was just making small improvement moves that was not drawing up the battle lines of the position with like big fat chalk on the chalkboard. No, it was much more subtle than that. So I had to come up and produce my own ideas. I play c5. I was expecting something like push here, because, or maybe even push here, because that's what I usually see in this position, and just trying to really clamp down on the center. My opponent chose bishop e3 instead, which is, you know, it's a little bit too much, like they're relinquishing a bit of their advantage here, but it's not, you know, it gets the question mark and exclamation mark. It's not a bad move at all. The position is completely level. And I was still feeling uneasy. I was wanting to get into the flow state, but how could I get there? How can I get into the flow state? So, you know, pawn takes here, knight takes, and I play knight c6. And now I remember I was playing this game on my phone, and I was in quite of a noisy environment, A lot of stuff that would be distracting, that's like a big enemy of mine. Distractions, it can be like if it's a loud environment or if something is attacking my senses, it's very hard for me to focus, it's hard for me to concentrate. And at this point in the game, even though this is not special at all, this is just a completely equal situation, I noticed something. I noticed that this now, on the black side, looks a lot like a Sicilian dragon, which is an opening I play. I've made videos about it on the channel. You can check out if you want, the Sicilian dragon. What my opponent is playing here does not look like a Sicilian dragon at all. But it was hard for me. I was looking at my opponent's pieces. It was hard for me to get a good read on what this is really doing. There's so many options for them. They can go queen d2, castle long. They can castle short. They can play for f4. They can, like, they have a lot of time. It's hard to attack, like, and they have not showed what kind of plan they're going to go for. But I found a bit of calm. I found a bit of relaxation. I found a bit of focus in recognizing, wait a minute, this structure is familiar to me. This looks like the Sicilian dragon. And then it was as if focusing on that made the noise around me dampen a little bit. It just got a little quieter, because I was feeling at home a little bit. And I think that is one of the absolute keys in getting into the flow state. Feel at home. And you can do this in many ways, like, and you have to probably find what works for you individually, because you are your own individual, and this is, you know, we're talking about top level neurological functions in the brain, which is like the most complicated thing in all of the universe, maybe. So always be, of course, skeptical if somebody says you have to do exactly like this and then this will happen, if we are talking about something that is as complicated as your consciousness and the way you use your brain. So instead of taking what I say here as gospel, take it as inspiration. Inspiration to feel at home. And it's not necessarily in the position. It could also be in the environment. I know many competitors, they are very focused on, even footballers, they want to play with the same number on their shirt, on their playing shirt. Or I know that Grandmaster David Howell, he used to always play with this particular checkered wristband. Chris Corellia from the C-Squared podcast, he always chooses a lucky pin that he has at a tournament to write down his moves. And they call it luck often. They often talk about it as luck. And I think what could be going on, because I don't believe in luck, because that's actually, in my way of understanding the world, luck would be magical thinking. But I think that it can work anyways, because it can make you feel at home. It can make you say, okay, there is this overly complicated game, chess, which is like not even by supercomputers, they're not even able to find the best moves. Like every year there's a new version of Stockfish that finds better moves than the last version of Stockfish, even to this day. It is an extremely complicated game, and many situations in life are extremely complicated. So we are not able to understand all the consequences of actions. We are not able to consider all the factors in many situations in life. And I think one of the reasons chess is so popular is because it mirrors life in this way. But if you find a way to feel at home and say, it's not just chaos, It is hard to understand. It is complex. But with this little thing here, this is my door into the position. This is my door into understanding this situation I find myself in. Then it can help you tremendously. I really believe that. And that was what I got here. It's not that recognizing this position as a Sicilian dragon looking from the dark side really did anything more than give me a hook into feeling at home. And that allowed me to sort through all the stuff that my brain is always processing. Your brain is always doing a million things, and I think that if you want to get in the flow state, you have to get the brain to do mostly what you are focused on. In this case, chess. Opponent castled, and I played bishop c7, and I was still not completely in the flow state, but I was getting the feeling that I could get into the flow state. And rather than being frantic about looking for good moves, I was at this point looking for ways to get into the flow state. Not allow this just little sliver of flow state that I had grabbed by being familiar with the position, not allow it to get away by focusing on the wrong thing. My opponent is doing this queen d2 with this very standard idea of exchanging this bishop for this bishop. I reply in a standard way by making room for the bishop to go here. So if we see bishop h6, the bishop can go back without hanging the exchange on f8. And I was still trying, how do I get into the flow state? How do I get into the flow state? My opponent played knight de2, and I played rook c8, and I was finding some comfort in playing these moves. They were pretty easy to find. They were not necessarily the absolute best moves in the position, but they maintained equality. They were absolutely good enough, and I found some calmness in that. I felt at home in that, and I started thinking, oh, I know what to do here. I need to not try to invent something just because my opponent's playing this slightly different thing. I'm feeling at home with my own pieces, but I'm looking at these pieces, and I don't as of yet understand completely what's going on here. And I thought I will listen to my intuition very, very much here. And I'm not going to just blindly play any move that my intuition says, but I'm never going to play a move that my intuition says is bad, even though I don't understand it logically. Does that make sense? So I had this just little sliver of the flow state. I could sort of glimpse the flow state. I'm saying, okay, how can I give myself the best chance of getting into the flow state? Well, I will listen. I will feel my intuition. Opponent plays a3. I play a6. And this is because there's no flow state as of yet. So normally, maybe if I was not being cautious and wanting to get into the flow state, if I didn't have this correct frame of mind, I would try to force my will on the position. And my intuition was not at this point creating any good ideas for what I could do. And I was looking at different things, like knight jumps here, which could be a fine move, but my intuition was not recognizing that as anything special. And when I considered pawn to a6, it just said should be good enough. Not forcing your will on anything. Just survive, wait until something emerges. Until you get deeply into the game, something will emerge. Just trust. Just trust in me. Opponent, please. F4. I go out with the queen. This is an idea that's actually quite common. And when I was playing this, I was thinking if they play b4, like my intuition was saying, like this is a move that you can play that's not going to make your position worse. But I felt I would have to actually go all the way back if they played b4. It turns out that they did play b4, and I didn't go all the way back because I remembered like queen a5 to h5 is like one of the main ideas in the dragon. It's like how you can get the queen into the game, but logically, superficially, I would just feel that this is too easy to attack this queen. This, of course, is not protected, so you couldn't play g4 right away, but these bishops could come back and trap the queen somehow. It looked very dangerous. And somehow here, because I had allowed myself to give the intuition time to stew a little bit, time to, how to say, it felt hurt. It felt that I could hear it. It's weird to talk about it like it's a different being, but it kind of feels like that sometimes. It kicked in because I had been calm enough to play the position in such a way, waiting for it, not getting into a situation that is disagreeable to my intuition just because I need to do something active. So I was not doing something active. I was just maintaining the tension at the position. And all of a sudden, it said, no, you can play queen h5. That was the feeling I got. And logically, it looks wrong, but it's actually just fine. And I played it, and I just trusted if my intuition is really saying that I can play this, I will just play it. The worst thing that can really happen is that it's not good, and there's something my intuition doesn't understand. There is a pattern it has not considered, and then it will improve for the next game. But actually, this is completely playable. It's one of the best moves in the position. So how do we justify it? They attack us with the knight. We attack the knight, and they attack us like this. And this is the kind of thing that playing queen h5, this is the kind of thing I was thinking, like, I'm getting my queen trapped here. I'm getting my queen trapped. Like, this is just a recipe for disaster. This is a recipe for how to get your queen trapped. Like, this is attacked, this is attacked, this is attacked. Like, how? Like, I could only go here, and only something like this is needed in order to, like, the queen doesn't have a lot of squares. So now, but I felt that this was okay. I felt it. So instead of looking for ways to bail my queen out, I started looking for ways to justify their queen being there, because apparently my intuition was saying that it was okay. And this is what I came up with. So after this, of course, I need to save my queen. So knight here is a deadly threat, opening up an attack on the queen, also taking this square away so I can't go here. So queen h6. Saying, can we justify this? It's okay. And it attacks us here. And I play knight h5. This is not a perfect move, because I'm not a super grandmaster, so my intuition only covers the patterns I know. It does not cover all the patterns in chess. There are so many, and actually there is a way to play here for white that will give a slight advantage to white, as we can actually investigate the correct way. So knight g to e2, and I play f5 in order to not allow this to move forward, and the attack, the advantage that white can get is not about the queen being here. It's actually about this diagonal towards the king. So I'm not saying that this is perfect at all. But it did work. Okay, because this was what me and my opponent was thinking about. f5. Opening up here. This was what I was feeling. And in the Sicilian Dragon, we have the one-eyed super monster sniper bishop, or Bob, as we also sometimes call them, this bishop. And it's all about making this bishop strong, and somehow my intuition figured out that it will be strong. So we play here. So you can't capture the queen. Does that make sense? Because there's this. And actually, white is just done now. It's just completely busted. You can't even capture the bishop, because the queen now hangs. This queen is unprotected. So they tried to defend like this. And can you, like, this is a crazy position. Sometimes when I get into the flow state, it almost feels that it's like it's not me playing. I mean, it is, but like, this situation is so complicated. Look at all these pieces, so many pieces, and it's made out of patterns that I have seen before. I must have, because I didn't invent this over the board at all. I recognized it somehow. I got access to it because I had allowed myself to get to a position where I could get access to it, instead of trying to force my will on the position. But it didn't feel like immediately now here my intuition just said, you know, knight e5. This is going to be good. There's so many options. They played king h1. So now they are threatening the queen. And can you see the attacking idea? So you just capture the rook, sacrificing the queen, because knight takes knight. It's checkmate. So, like, solving puzzles, playing chess, analyzing games will allow us to learn these patterns, and the question then becomes, how to get into the flow state so we can access them while we play. So that's it for the video. I hope that you got some relaxation, maybe learned a little bit about chess, and thank you very much for watching. I hope I will see you in the next video.